pleasure circuit, smoking all the time. Now nothing's any fun anymore.
Well, as people know, I've reevaluated my past so thoroughly that I kind of feel that all of the things that I invested in or attached to were deceptive and somewhat delusional. But I also feel that they were grist for the mill and just part of the process, necessary part, even psychedelics. So then the question is why choose to emphasize the negative aspect? Maybe if I'd known that Chris Knowles was going to be so down on it, I might have, to be contrary, I might have chosen to take the other tack, but that's probably neither here nor there. The reason I thought it was particularly relevant now is that in my last blog post I wrote about how the focusing on the negative and the, let's say, chunking up, to use a term I've introduced recently via Dave Oshana, the chunking up from a kind of general data set of deception and manipulation within culture to a blanket rejection of culture, A, may be premature, and B, may be self-serving in some way, may not be simply a necessary position or perspective to take in order to protect oneself or to liberate oneself. It may also be an aspect of it that's self-serving. It may become itself a crucial fiction. And so this is where I'm at regarding the nature of the world. I want to open up. I want to allow for some chinks in the conceptual armor that I've created, just as somebody like Jan Irvin has created, and there are many listeners and followers. That's like this prophylactic that's supposedly there to allow us to have safe sex with the culture. Like, I can carry on watching Netflix because I know it's bad for me. So then I'll take the necessary precautions to not get SDT. But the flip side of that is that I will feel like a hypocrite, and maybe even be a hypocrite. I'll be using my paranoid awareness not as a way to more consciously navigate the shopping mall hell of society, but as an excuse to keep shopping there. I'm aware, man. I'm paranoid, so I can just carry on drinking the Kool-Aid. How nonsensical is that? This is Jonestown. We need to get out. So if I'm not willing to totally extricate myself from culture and the world, and I'm not able, and I'm even finding ways to be in the world that seem fruitful and nourishing, then why not soften my position about that without backpedaling? This is the art of the ninja. I don't have to backpedal because I don't think I ever went out on a limb and said culture is all bad, full stop. I might have said that, but there was always a comma and a but. Like in Seen and Not Seen, it's all shit, but I'm writing a book to tell you that it's all shit, which means this book is shit. Well, okay, so how do we square that circle? There's a ray of light in that, potentially. I mean, either I'm an irredeemable hypocrite, or I'm trying to get to something that words aren't really getting me to, so I'm having to unveil or reveal the contradictory, hypocritical nature of words. It's not all shit, clearly, because out of shit comes flowers, and flowers aren't shit. The word shit is very different from the thing shit. Like, the word shit just means something bad. Well, it's good shit, man. Even there, we're confused, right? But basically, And the way I'm using it now anyway, it just means something you do not want in your life. However, shit, the physical reality is something that you cannot do without in your life. Not that you have a use for it, but I mean that there's no way to avoid having some kind of interaction with shit. Well, it's not all shit. It's just that there's so much shit and it's been spread thin like butter, so far and wide that it feels like everything is shitty. And maybe it is. Maybe we do need to carry around a hanky every time. I just watched Alan Partridge demonstrating how to use a toilet on the train without touching anything. It was very, very hilarious, and obviously very topical now. When we're moving through the world, yeah, we do want to practice hygiene, recognize that there probably is shit on most stuff, and we don't want to get shit on our hands. But that doesn't mean that everything is shit. It just means everything is a bit shitty. And that's not the same thing. We might be actually selling ourselves short in terms of we can handle a little bit of shittiness, and we need to if we're going to sort the seeds and find what is of value, clearly. And even in a way, I mean, that has to even be in culture. What's the value in culture? It's funny because I started out as a film critic and that was what it was all about. And then I became a paranoid, full card carrying, and now I might, well, the better a film is, maybe the worse it is, because it's a delivery device for toxic culture. And I'm not reneging on that. I'm not backpedaling. But as I say about shit, shit is the result of the body's ability to separate the nutrition from the waste. So if we can do that bodily, we can do that psychically too. We can be entirely open to culture, as long as we know how to process it and to extract the nutrients. And there are nutrients in the culture, thank God. Otherwise we would all be dead. And a lot more zombified than we are. I think the hypothetical they are trying to reduce over time steadily the nutrients within, of course, the food, literally speaking, but also the culture, figuratively speaking, so that there's less and less nutrients and more waste, and it's harder and harder for us to process it. So we use more and more energy. It's like if you use more energy digesting the food than the food gives you, you will die. And I think the human race probably is dying from indigestion in this continuation of the metaphor. Well, this kind of extends, I think, to the whole paranoid worldview as well. There seems to be a correlation between the people who are immersed in dark paranoid deconstructions of culture and the people who are actually addicted to dissociative fantasy, whether it's via movies like The Matrix or marijuana or psychedelics. There's a sort of symbiotic relationship there between, on the one hand, rejecting the culture and on the other hand, wanting to stay immersed in it. And of course, the paranoid worldview, such as a movie like The Matrix, allows us to have our cake and eat it. We can feel that we're on the edge of the counterculture or the counterculture, while at the same time we're imbibing the products of the mainstream, like Alex Jones. Yeah. So, yeah, not what I'm about, or at least insofar as that is that I do have those predilections, orientations myself, then I want to examine them and question them. And that all seems to be quite in tandem with shifting the audience, maybe by extension, the orientation away from the mind, where it is dark, to the body, where it is light, where lightning strikes. The thing is developing trust as the result of discernment. And discernment is a relentless skepticism that can be mistaken for cynicism, but it also can devolve into cynicism, because we get so tired of being skeptical, while at the same time truly skeptical is open, staying open. It gets hard to stay open when every time everything you check out turns out to be dirty or flawed or false or counterfeit. Then the temptation to just start closing down and turn skepticism into cynicism is great. But then we've actually missed the boat. All of that developed discernment is for nothing, because the only reason to develop discernment is to trust. Because once we have a sufficient level of discernment, we can move through the world with trust that we will recognize the fakes, not with our minds, however. So, because if it was our minds, then that would be cynicism again. That wouldn't be trust. Can't ever trust with our minds, because the mind is configured to distrust. That's what it does. Suspicious Minds is a song that comes to mind.
We're caught in a trap. I can't walk out.
So I feel as though, as I say about the bridge, is that, there may have been a certain amount of genuine disorientation or destabilization for some people listening or reading when I changed tack so quickly, went from paranoid awareness to enlightenment now, so apparently quickly, even though, as I tried to point out, ever since I've started this, there's always been the thread of, this is not it. What I'm talking about here isn't it. It's what we have to get through to get to it, the thing that I can't talk about. It's always been there for the discerning. But anyway, it may have felt like you're going from 0 to 60 miles an hour to some people. And so the last blog post I wasn't consciously designed this way, but I could see as I was writing it, this is going to serve this purpose, to help strengthen the bridge, because maybe it was a bit of a ropey bridge previously, and people say, there's no way I'm going to cross that thing, my God, and I can't even see the bottom of that chasm. You didn't even bother to build a sturdy bridge. Fuck you, Charlie. So yeah, to fortify the bridge that I built by re-including the paranoid aware perspective into the new focus and orientation, because it's still relevant, but it's also specifically relevant in terms of why I'm moving away from it, or coming through it, coming out the tunnel, how I'm coming out the end of the tunnel, and why it's necessary to do so. That the only point in being in the tunnel is to come out at the other end. It wasn't to read all the graffiti. But while we're in the tunnel, well, for a long period, we don't know we're in the tunnel. We just think we're in darkness. So, of course, we're looking for signs. But if we get stuck on the signs, I'm getting chills now because it's like I must be saying something that's true or meaningful. If we get stuck on the signs, then we'll stop moving forward, and we'll forget that that we may be in a tunnel, or that we are trying to find the way out. Like, we start by looking to read the signs to find a way out, but the signs become so overwhelming and so compelling and so confusing and so hard to decipher that at a certain point, like crypto-crubology, we might end up just drowning in a sea of signs, and let the signs tell us what it is that we're trying to discover here. I don't know why I mentioned crypto-crubology, because he may be on the right track. I may be completely missing something there. But what it looks like from the outside is somebody who has got so overwhelmed by the signs that the signs have become everything. And although there's still the sense of, this is meaningful, because of course we can't do something if we don't tell ourselves it's meaningful, the meaning that we've latched onto is being generated by the signs themselves. Now, this is very different than letting the evidence tell us what's happening. That's a solid research method. But if we're talking about a transcendent goal, which is how do we get out of this mess, then the evidence isn't going to tell us how to get out. It's only going to tell us how is the trap configured, and from there we can deduce more effectively which intuitions are correct and which are not correct, as in are not intuitions but are delusions, as far as how do we move forward, through and out. Where is the light at the end of the tunnel that we cannot see? How do we keep moving, referring to the evidence just to let us know that we're staying with the factual, but we're moving through it. We're moving through the evidence to make a picture coherent that's local, a local coherent picture, which we can then extrapolate to the world, but that's not really the point. That would be the way to stay in the tunnel, because the world is endless. We extrapolate out to the world because the research was world-based anyway, so we're constantly referring back and forth between the world, what we're mapping in the world, and our own lives. But the reference point that we can confirm only is our own lives. And as we confirm that, we confirm it in our bodies, because our bodies know. And as we place our awareness in our bodies, we start to see the light. We start to see the way out. And so the more and more our focus is on our bodies, the more we're confirming the organized malevolence and the nature of the trap we're in, the more we're seeing the way out of the trap. And so the less important, essentially, it becomes to have any reference point to that stuff. Paranoia becomes metanoia. And then it doesn't matter that the world is configured the way it is. It's not an issue, nor is it an issue to really understand mentally, or be able to judge mentally between good and bad culture, because the body knows all this. Because we can get comfortable in a nightmare too. That's kind of the worst case scenario, because then what have we got left to awaken us? So we have the idea of a dark night of the soul, or a paranoid conspiracy world that we're locked in, trapped inside, and that becomes the familiar narrative, the crucial fiction. We're really fucked then. Because the very thing that exists in a divine sense, or an existential sense, to wake us up, has become our comfort zone. It's no longer nightmarish, it's dreamlike. Or it's no longer sufficiently nightmarish to wake us up. We've found a way to adapt to it. So we've become of the world, even in our attempts to get free of the world. Because not being in the world, being in the world but not of the world, becoming not of the world isn't about trying to escape from the world. It's the opposite. It's about coming all the way into the body, and the body is nested in the world, society, culture, human beings, nature. I guess like that, really. Those are the levels of matrices. And eventually they're benign. Nature is not entirely benign, pretty ruthless, but nature is nested in eternity, which is benign through and through. So, and all of that eternally bleeds through all the layers, through nature, into the human beings who are nature, into culture, and into society. It's all us, and it's all eternity. It's all benign. But if we stay focused and fixated on the nightmare of history, and our only way to deal with it is just to adapt to it and become more like it, and part of that is that we're going to fight it and resist it and reject it, because that's what the world is like, the scapegoat mechanism, then we're trapped. And that's the mind's defense, to create a heaven out of hell, and thereby create a hell out of heaven.
I've ride my pleasure circuit, smoking all the time. Now nothing's any fun anymore. I lied when I told you everything was just fine. Nothing's any fun anymore. Nothing you can do, nothing you can say. Ain't easy doing nothing, gotta do it anyway. Nothing you can say, nothing you can do, nothing else that I can say to you. I've ride my pleasure circuit, smoking all the time. Now nothing's any fun anymore. I lied when I told you everything was just fine.